Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are super excited to have Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp on our podcast today. She's going to be talking about biohacking. Biohacking's in the news a lot lately, and it's a good thing to talk about what is good, what is bad, what is not necessary, all that good stuff. So, Nathalie, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
So tell us a little bit about how you got here.
I have to go back in time when I was 14 years old. I think a lot of us in health have our own stories of struggles with health. So for me, I was anorexic. So I had to figure out a way. I always joke there was no Chat GPT or Google back then to try to find information to help yourself. So, local libraries and mentors and coaches and so forth. And since then, I've had a passion about health and well-being, became a chiropractor. That's what my main training is, as well as certified with the Institute of Functional Medicine. So I'm just passionate about sharing health with my patient, the tips, tools, and strategies that work for me and hopefully will inspire them for their own health. And I'm constantly learning all the time. And I'm sure you guys are when you have over 600 shows under your belt, right?
Yes, exactly. So tell us about biohacking. So there's a lot of influencers out there.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of one off the top of my head that spends $1.6 million on all these supplements and all these tests every year so he can biohack his body and live forever. He literally says that.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a lie.
Yeah.
So tell us what your thoughts are about biohacking.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. When I decided on the titles of my book, Hack Your Health Habits and Smart Cut Biohack Your Health Span, we were a bit reluctant to use the word biohacking because it can have a negative connotation, even with computer. If you're being hacked, it's not a good thing. So for me, and I know the biohacker you're talking about, for me, biohacking is just being efficient with our strategies about our health and, being efficient in the sense that if you do not need to work out for an hour and a half a day, well, what's more efficient to give you the best results? Same thing with your nutrition, same thing with your supplements, same thing with your movement, same thing with, your nervous system, same thing with detoxification and so forth. So for me, it's about being again, efficient because people are really overwhelmed. Now there's too much information. And I think people are like, wow, what do I need to do? So to me, again, biohacking is a shortcut, but not necessarily a shortcut with the latest gadget or tools or strategies. More, the most, the better way that you can do it for your own health. But keeping the basis, right? You still need to sleep your 7 to 9 hours. You still need to exercise. You still need to eat whole food. So I don't want people to think biohacking is a fast track bypassing all of those things. We always say you cannot outsmart or if your nutrition is not dialed in, your workouts are not going to be good and vice versa, right? So when it comes to health, we still need those pillars of health for sure. So it's just about efficiency and about helping people not feeling overwhelmed because they feel like they need to do all of these things that are on social media.
Yeah, those are my thoughts exactly. Janet and I preach over and over on this podcast that sleep, diet, movement, exercise, those are probably the three most important things. And if you're not focusing on them and you haven't optimized those, especially if you're doing a horrible job of it, there is no magic biohack out there, whether it be a peptide, a supplement, hormones. You have to focus on those three big ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Janet, what questions do you have for Nathalie?
So Nathalie, I was very interested that you brought up your past and the struggle you had with food. Do you find that is true for a lot of people still? Maybe not in the same direction, but do you see food as being a real problem for your clients?
Yes. and equally male to female. And I would add to that too, it's not just food, it's addiction in general, right? Like our society right now is dopamine hit on so many things that I think our brain and our nervous system is just overloaded. So yes, food is definitely an issue, and let's face it, the food industry is making the food to keep us addicted, right? So it's almost sometimes sad to see how people are just trying so darn hard and they're not getting the results because of so many factors, that it is toxins in our environment and the lack of movement and the food, the quality of the food that people are eating, and overall stress, right? Like when you're on this sympathetic dominance, that it's that go, 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 you're stuck in that fight or flight pattern, your cortisol is peaking at the wrong time, and you have nervous system dysregulation, you can't be functioning properly, and it's hard to make the decision. So it becomes that sad spiraling down trend that can happen for people. And a lot of people are trying really hard to eat the right food, but again, they feel overwhelmed, and they're not always necessarily going in the right direction or being supported by the right people to help them, again, going back to the basic of what can be done or should be done.
So speaking of that, tell us a little bit. I think on your website it talks about your book. What's your book? What's the name of your book?
Yeah, so the book is called Smart Cut, Biohack Your Health Span, Cutting Edge Protocols for Greater Energy and Performance, because at the end of the day, that's what we want, good energy. And even if we age and we're not athletes anymore, we still want to perform. So my co-author and I, Dr. Sly, really wanted to make it, because we're both in practice and talking to patients all the time, we wanted to make it practical and action-driven, that it was simplifying for people the actions that they have to do in a day. And we chose health span as opposed to lifespan, because I think it's important to note the difference, that we all want to live long, but not if we're, living to 100 and our quality of life decrease at 75. So health span is about being vibrant and having the energy to do what we want to do and have a good quality of life. So that's what the book is all about. And we do touch exactly on, sleep, rest and recovery, hydration, fuel and fundamentals, movement, exercise, and also detoxification. We talk about neurotransmitter and hormones and the brain rewiring, because we're just so overstimulated. And of course, we talk about genetics, epigenetics, and just what people can do to focus on that health span that we're talking about.
So if you were going to pick one of those that somebody was going to focus on, I know every person is different because they're probably lacking in different areas of those that you just mentioned. But if you're going to pick one to just focus on, which one would you pick?
I would say sleep. Sleep is underrated, and myself included. When I purchase a sleep tracker, I'm like, oh, I'm not sleeping enough, right? So sleep, and especially with that busyness of society, you meet a friend, say, hey, how has it been? You've been busy. Like, oh, why are we asking each other if we've been busy, right? So it's almost like it used to be anyway, a badge of honor to, not sleep and be working late and being productive and so forth. But I feel now there's a bit of a change with the trackers that we have to pay attention, and a little bit more on self-care. So as boring as it may sound, sleep would be my number one. And if I had to pick a number two, it'd be strength training, keeping our muscle mass, especially for women, just because, the musculoskeletal system is so important for metabolism. As we age, I think it's past 30, our muscle mass decreases, our bone density decreases. And we forget that, with a decrease in hormones, sarcopenia, which is losing muscle, happens. So if we want to counteract that as much as possible, really focusing on strength training. And for for people that have not weight trained at all, it's never too late. We see research showing women well in their 70s being able to increase their muscle mass and increase their bone density. So it's never too late. So I would say those two things are key. And again, it's pretty boring. It's pretty basic. We all know that we should do that, but those are so key to me.
Janet.
Well, I think too, the thing that we need to realize is that a lot of these things are not unaffordable. Like your sleep is not unaffordable, but if you do capitalize on that, you probably are going to be more productive. I mean, Shawn and I have figured that out many times, that when you were stressed or tired, that your performance goes down actually. So we need to kind of shift the paradigm of thinking to, if I get the quality of sleep and the length of sleep, then I am going to be more effective in my life. And to me, that's very powerful for people, because, you know, that one extra hour that you stayed up thinking you were productive actually, you know, was counterproductive. So it's a shift of thinking. And I think exercise is one of those things as well. There's so many people that maybe didn't start out as an athlete young in life and think that that's not going, you know, there's, oh, well, I never have been. But like you said, it's never too late. But this is something that can be very, very effective. So I love your points on that.
Yeah, and I see it a lot when my patients retire from work. They have more time to dedicate to their health. And I mean, some don't dedicate the time to their health more, but some do. And it's like, wow, they're kind of in the best shape of their lives, because they truly are dialing it in when it comes to, you know, walking and pickleball and going to the gym and doing all this. So I love when I see patients using their extra time, you know, that they have now that they're not working to do all this. It's inspiring, and I mean, they see the difference right away.
It is inspiring, and a reminder that just because, you know, we get older doesn't mean we need to get weaker. And you know, those are facts for most anybody, unless they were a high caliber athlete when they were in their 20s. Most of us can continue to progress well into our 50s, depending on the sport and depending on the competitiveness. But you know, there's no excuse to, you know, that you're too old, because I just don't think you ever are, unless you want to, you know, die weak in a nursing home, and that's not the way I want to go out.
Yeah. I don't let my patient play the age card very easily. I say, no, we're not going there. What can we do with what we have? And, you know, to positively change that as well. And also reminding ourselves that aging is a privilege also, right? You know, not everyone gets the chance to be around for a long time. So I think, you know, the mindset that we need to have on health span is that there's a lot that we can do ourselves. You know, genetic is one thing, but epigenetic, which means above the gene, which means our lifestyle, can play a huge role. And I mean, if you follow people like Dr. Bruce Lipton, I think he said some percentage as 90% epigenetic, 10% genetic. So to me, it's inspiring knowing that, okay, I might not have the good gene for this, that, and the other thing, but if my lifestyle is good enough, I might be able to keep them turned off. So to me, again, it's inspiring to know that we have way more control over our health than we think. And, you know, when people say, oh, you know, type 2 diabetes, you know, my dad had it, I'm like, I hate to break it to you, this is more a lifestyle issue, right? Like, so there are things that, you know, I think we blame too much on genetic as kind of an escape to say, okay, well, yeah, same thing. Just yesterday, I had a young lad with, you know, major back issues, scoliosis. And again, he went on to say everybody is in his family has back issues. Yes, there's a genetic component, but not as much as one would think.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we hear that all the time in medicine, don't we? A lazy doctor will tell people, oh, it's just genetics. So, you know, your mom had diabetes, your dad had diabetes, you're going to have diabetes, so let's just start on a drug now. We hear that stuff all the time. Or cardiovascular disease. Well, your dad died of a heart attack early. You're probably going to be at risk. So here's the Lipitor. It's like, you know, when you think about most diseases, type 2 diabetes is a great one. You know, 30 years ago, 90% of all all diabetics were type 1 diabetics. Now 90% of them are type 2 diabetics. Well, genetics don't change in 30 years. Genetics takes multiple generations. What does change are people's habits. And that's what's happened over the last 30 years with cardiovascular disease and most any chronic disease
is inflammation, right? Like, so those inflammatory diseases are crazy. And for me as a chiropractor, it's also arthritis. Go to the doctor. Oh, not much you can do. You're in pain. Like, it's arthritis. I'm like, oh my good Lord, right? Let's look at your diet. Let's look at your mechanic. And, you know, you've been crooked all your life, but I always give the analogy of a car. You know, if the alignment of a car is not right, you can keep changing the tires as they're going to wear out, but ideally you'd work on the frame. So there's a lot of mindset shift to be done in terms of prevention. And you're right, the inflammatory diseases are most of the chronic ailments that we have in the world right now.
Yeah, and you're right. There's a lot of people that think that arthritis is probably not reversible, but we hear it all the time when somebody changes their diet that all of a sudden their joints aren't inflamed, and they just feel better. So that's just it's not true. You know, most diseases aren't a drug deficiency. They're probably a lack of what you've already talked about: sleep, your diet, your movement. As you know, being a chiropractor, I'm sure moving your joints in the right way can help arthritis many, many times.
Yeah. Diet and movement when it comes to that, and obviously alignment and proper brain-body communication, right? Sometimes people are so unfortunately deconditioned that, you know, their proprioception is not firing on all cylinder, core muscles. And a lot of it too comes from our society sitting so much. I remember 10 years ago when I heard sitting is the new smoking. I thought, well, that's a little bit dramatic of a statement, but 10 years later, having, you know, touched and worked on so many patients, I'm seeing the impact of sitting. Back in the days, it used to be my, you know, more physical labor people that had spine issues. Now it is the people at the desk hunched over, you know, all in flexion. It even affects our brain that we're not firing our extensors muscles as much. So I think that the fact that we have become more sedentary, that most of us, it's rare that people are not asked to be on the computer. Even if you have a physical job, there's some time that needs to be spent on a computer. We sit for transit. We sit at night because we're exhausted to potentially watch TV and so forth. So movement is key, and integrating those movements throughout the day is crucial. And people I tell patients, put your phone beeper on every hour, or buy yourself another device that's going to beep. Say, okay, get up. Go do 25, you know, body squat. Go do, you know, a 2-minute plank. Like, we need to integrate it in our days now because we're so inactive. If ever a person is working at the computer all the time.
Yeah, and like you say, it really, just like you're talking about, setting a timer every hour, and do it for 30 seconds. It doesn't take long. Just do something.
Yeah.
People think they want to make it so that it has to be complicated.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. And I want to go back to when you were talking about when people retire, they have more time, which is true. Unfortunately, as you kind of mentioned, some people don't take advantage of that and they get more sedentary. But the reality of it is all of us have time to move and to sleep and to eat correctly. It doesn't take that much time. People will see somebody that's in great shape and they'll think, wow, I wonder how many hours a week, you know, she or he works out. And the reality of it is, you know, that person probably sleeps well. And they probably eat well. You can't exercise your way out of a bad diet. You know, so it doesn't take any more time to eat healthy than it does to eat junk food. I mean, I know there's a lot of argument about that, but those are just facts if you prepare. So we all have time, even if we're not retired. Most people will spend more time scrolling their phones than
yes. Oh my God.
You know, in a
that
half
can
hour
be
could be working out.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right that, you go and, I don't know, answer some emails for a few minutes. And if you hop on one of the social media platform and next thing you know, it's 15 minutes. Well, you could have done a quick hit workout for 15, 20 minutes. So you're so right. So, I think that's brings us to another point that we do need to disconnect from, being bombarded by all this. It's not good for our health to, be constantly hooked. I see patients with, again, nothing against Fitbit and Apple Watches and Whoops and Oura Rings and all, but I think we'd use it for what it's worth, for certain parameters, but to receive texts every 2 seconds and knowing like our brains were not meant for that. And talk about our kids too, right? Like that are being bombarded by this information, all the time in the stimulation. So I think now we have to put it in our calendar and our agendas to say, okay, where's my disconnect time that I'm just going to leave my phone, go for a walk, not even listening to a podcast, and, go in nature. We need to carve those in because, as I mentioned earlier, we're in that fight or flight, that you want it or not, in that sympathetic dominance. So we need to be able to recalibrate and get our sympathetic nervous system going. So as a chiropractor, I talk about nervous system regulation all the time. So, things like breath work, exercise, a little bit of, potentially sauna or cold plunging. Again, not a one size fits all. If I have a woman who's exhausted, jumping in the frozen river is not a good idea, right? Like, again, it's just not a one size fits all, as you mentioned, but those are things to help build resilience. And by doing this, you're helping balancing, your sympathetic and parasympathetic. I'm sure you're familiar with the vagus nerve, and that the longest nerve in the body, that is cranial nerve 10, which comes out of our neck, goes all the way down to our gut. Hence the expression sometime when we say, oh, I had a gut feeling about this, that it was going to be good or not good. Well, that's probably our vagus nerve at play here. And the role of the vagus nerve is it's very parasympathetic, that rest and digest. So everything that we can do to keep good vagal tone is important for that balance and in nervous system regulation.
I really like the point that you brought up to get out in nature. That's something that I think every mom knew with their young children, that you take your kids outside, wear them out, but really it's connecting them to the earth that we are part of. Yeah. I think that is a really big piece of our life. If I look back at my parents, it's totally different. My grandparents, totally different, right? So I think that is something that, again, it's a very affordable thing to do. It's just making that a part of your schedule. I know I tell the gals at work, on your 10-minute break, walk around the block, get outside, get in the sunshine, just get away from all the phones, the people, the noise, because it does do something. It does reset you, even if it's for a short period of time. And you're right, that is a huge, it's so affordable, right? Like there's no money involved except for involving how you are arranging your schedule.
Yeah. And if we go back to biohacking, it doesn't have to be, costly. So biohacking could be, it's getting cold here where I am, but, barefoot outdoor in the back, getting my sunlight in my eyes, drinking my, herbal tea with my collagen and my creatine. So, I'm touching the ground, I'm in nature, I'm, starting my circadian cycle for the day and so forth. So it doesn't cost anything. So I think the word biohacking, sometimes people think it's expensive supplements, it's expensive tools and gadgets, which I have and I test, and I still, like to play with the biohacking tools that we have. But guess what? I use them for a bit, and, even some vagus nerve stimulator, but I'd much rather do it the natural way and the way that, my body was designed to do it. So a walk in nature and just trying to decompress, and breath work is a great way to reset your physiology pretty darn quickly, right?
For sure. I want to talk a little bit about wearables. We talked briefly about it. I'm with you on the wearables. I think that if you continuously monitor, data, whether it be heart rate, which can, your heart rate variability, and your steps, and all that kind of stuff that those wearables will do now, I think it actually can add stress to your body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that's one of the reasons I don't do it. I do wear, I do track a lot of data when I'm exercising. I track my heart rate and my power on my bike and all that kind of stuff. And I could tell if I was off anyways, once you've done it long enough. So I'm not a big believer in wearing wearables all the time. I think for maybe a month to kind of, if you want to shoot for 10,000 steps a day, find out, wear this wearable, find out what it takes to do 10,000 steps.
Yeah.
And then just try to do that every day. You don't need to, sit there and, oh man, I gotta get my steps in. And,
I think I agree with you. But one thing I think we need to consider, there's wearable that are not transmitting all the time, right? Like for instance, some of the rings I put on airplane mode. I'll only download it in the morning, look at my sleep, So, and I even thought to myself, you know what, when my battery dies, will I purchase another one? Maybe not. But it was a good thing to start because like I said, I discovered 5 years ago that I was not sleeping enough. And then going through menopause, it's like, okay, what was my deep sleep, REM sleep last night? I took this supplement. So there are some values, but I totally agree with you that tracking too much, some people, I don't track my macronutrient or, any of that stuff. And some people track everything. It would be too much. It just would be too much. And it can be overwhelming. And also, I think if we only rely on external tools, we forget about that interoception. We forget about checking in with ourselves. We're waiting on something to tell us, right? So, just again, slowing down, closing your eyes, going outside, and just how am I feeling, and just checking in with yourself. So I agree. Plus, put in the electromagnetic field that's constantly being bombarded, which I'm very cautious with those. So again, it's not a one size fits all. It depends what your needs are. Some people do need the motivation to say, I didn't do my 10,000 step, and it's 5 o'clock, they get home, they're only at 3,000. Well, because they see that, then they're going to get their bums outside and do it. So you got to weigh the pros and cons if it's going to motivate the person to move. But I am very concerned with the electromagnetic field and also the constant bombardment of texting and all of this on your wrist, seeing it all the time. To me, this is too much.
That's very interesting you said that, because we've noticed how many more people are walking around doing this. It's just the same thing as your phone, only smaller, right? And now it's going to be on your wrist.
Yeah. I have the perfect example talking about that. My oldest patient is 98 years old. She came in yesterday and she's talking about her 100th anniversary, which is in 2 years, and her goal, she got a Fitbit, so she's doing this, and I'm thinking, oh my god, she's 98, this is so cute, right? But she knew how many steps she had, and her goal is to walk a 5K by the time she's 100. I mean, kudos, right? Like like kudos to her now that she's tracking all that, and that's her goal. So again, there's, like anything, any tools, there's good and bad.
Exactly, right? For sure. I mean, I always talk on our podcast to default what our ancestors did. Our ancestors didn't have any fancy watch monitoring their steps.
No.
It was really simple. They moved during the day. They slept at night.
They had to fish for their foods, right?
And they ate real food. It's really that simple.
Yeah. It is, but here's one of the downfalls, I think, especially on the emotional and mental side of and spiritual side of people. We have a disconnect of connection with people. And I think the younger we are, especially our younger youth, that we have to get that back, and we have to work on that, because if you think about other cultures, when they sit down and have their coffee together, they're not sitting there alone. They're with a group of friends, right? Same with our meals or our weekends or whatever. We need to connect that. Many times we're searching for these, big solutions, but maybe it's just the downtime with your friends that's going to calm ourselves, right? Because they're going to be able to share with you their day, and that does something for us. So I really think sometimes when we're searching for things, that maybe it's the very simple thing of being intentional and, hey, let's just sit down and hang out together. And as humans, if we don't bond after we're born to our mother, we don't thrive, right? So how do we expect people to thrive throughout their life if we don't have that in us?
Well, if you look at the blue zone, researching the people who live, the longest, it's not necessarily a spectacular clean lifestyle, but the social component is there. And I just had this discussion with a friend that unfortunately nowadays we don't treat our elderly the way that we should in terms of, taking care of them and harnessing their wisdom and so forth. So I mean, it's changing back, but I think we could do a better job as a society to really honor our elders and really tap in their wisdom and have that time with them, because they have insight, they might not know about ChatGPT, but they have life insight that are again going back to keeping it simple. And you're so right, Janet, to say, now kids, I mean, you'll have some kids in the same house texting each other, or they don't even know how to communicate anymore because it's all done online. So that social aspect of shaking hands and just meeting people and being with like-minded people in terms of the groups or the activities that you do is key. That's a huge thing. And unfortunately, I was just listening to a podcast here in Toronto, and they're even removing the street benches. Like, they just want people like in and out, and it's just that community, that town square. You go and you hang out, right? So it's a big thing.
Yeah, for sure. So Nathalie, as we wrap this podcast up, tell us about your website.
My website is hopefully full of resources for people. There's a playbook with my top 10 biohacks that people can download. All my books, my 6 books, can be found on Amazon, and I blog every week. So I'm always blogging on different topics, and I do offer a online program, kind of a self-paced program, when people read the books and they want to dig a little bit deeper. And I do some one-on-one coaching with people if they need the extra help and they need the accountability and somebody to watch over them.
Awesome. So Nathalie, as we wrap this show up, what do you have a passion for?
Human potential, so that people just live their best life physically, but also, like you said, spiritually, because we're all here to contribute. And if you don't have your health, you're not going to be able to contribute at a bigger level.
That's right. Well, Nathalie, you've helped us realize our goal today, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you so much. You're welcome, guys. Thank you for having me. And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you. Nathalie, thank you so much.